Hello, my dear friends. We're gonna talk about nutrition today, according to human design, or like dietary habits, eating practices, that type of stuff. Because, let's start with a bit of a backstory about where I'm coming from. I mean, we all have our own personal histories with diet, nutrition, our relationship with food, all that type of stuff. I know that's like, more often than not, we've all struggled with it, or many of us have. And so I understand. Trust me, I get it. So I always struggled with that. Even when I was a child, I used to have a lot of like chronic gut issues, just stuff, everything used to upset my stomach all the time. It was always an issue, always an ongoing problem. And then as I got a little bit older, I did eventually develop an eating disorder. I don't know why exactly. I mean, we don't need to deep dive into that one, but I think a lot of trying to feel like, obviously body image is related to that. But then also too, food just has never made me feel good. It's never been like when people are like, oh, I feel so much better after I eat. And I'm like, I feel so much worse. So it's developed some weird phases of my life of my relationship with food because of that. And then I remember, this was in 2014 or so, I will say, when 2015 maybe, when the whole intermittent fasting craze was starting to become more popular. And I remember at that point in time, I just started working at a naturopathic clinic as a naturopathic doctor. And I was just like, yeah, I can easily get on board with this intermittent fasting thing because I don't like to eat. I just don't. I'm not a live to eat person. In some respects, it really depends. I'm a very pretentious eater, but I'm going to talk about that with human design in a second. I was like, I can get on board with this, this intermittent fasting thing. This is a no-brainer for me. It's finally giving me permission to not feel so guilty about the fact that I eat a certain way in the day, and to not force myself to feel like it's 3 meals and 2 snacks in the day. Because I mean, for me, nah, that's just, I'm never going to eat that way ever. And I just can't do it. It's not that I can't, it's that I won't. And it's because it doesn't make me feel good. It makes me feel like shit, super lethargic, just really all around. My body doesn't fare well with eating consistently, in the day. So obviously from a biochemical perspective, or, talking about insulin regulation, all that type of stuff. Yeah. Some people might be like, well, maybe you should work on your insulin regulation or blah, blah, blah. And yeah, okay, cool. That's great. I'm, been there, done that. I've done a lot of things to kind of focus on that in the past. And it's always just been this one thing where it's my normal eating habits, I go back to, not really eating a lot, and I'll eat when I'm hungry. I actually feel hunger now, which is unusual for me because I struggled with understanding what that felt like. I think just from years and years of just a really unhealthy relationship with responding to hunger cues and all that type of stuff. I eat when I'm hungry and I eat what I want. And I know that's been one too that I've really that's been an interesting concept to understand, because intuitive eating to me is bullshit. I really do think that it is. I don't think that intuitive eating is so great. I think you have to be in a certain relationship with food and nutrition, and understanding a bit more about your relationship with food before you start doing intuitive eating, because intuitive eating doesn't really account for sugar addictions, or having weird food cravings that might have something to do more with a habitual thing, for example, or again, the sugar stuff of having an addiction to sugar. And that's the part about intuitive eating that I'm not so on board for. I will say though that I don't eat a lot of sugar in my diet, hardly any at all. because I've gotten to the point where I don't really like the taste of it. So that's kind of like a non-issue for me. Like even like having too much fruit for me just doesn't make me feel good. So once you get over the, like, if you do struggle with a sugar related addiction, then yeah, maybe intuitive eating changes, like what that looks like might change. I don't know. Anyways, I'm not a big fan of it, but I think there needs to be, some understanding of, the basics of nutrition, like making sure that you're eating fresh food, dark leafy greens, like eating your vegetables, not eating like fried foods all the time. So yeah, of course, like I eat what I want, but contextually, I'm not an idiot. Yeah, it's too easy to be an idiot in this world because there's so much access and easy access to food that perhaps isn't prepared in the most healthful way for our bodies, or, food that's not very nutrient dense, that type of stuff. Anyways, that's a whole other conversation, I think. Human design and nutrition is really fascinating. And I think I've talked about it. I talked about it a little bit before in one of the unedited episodes, but I'm going to explain to you my experience with it. So I'm a nervous digestion or like buzziness. So like a buzzing atmosphere type of thing is actually a really good space for me to absorb things from the external world, which would include food and nutrition. I gave myself permission to be okay with this is just how I do things. And then once I gave myself that permission, it's like everything changed. And human design to me is that framework to give myself that permission that I felt like I was needing, as opposed to like following a certain set of like rules that were imposed on me as a citizen of humanity, or things that, you're supposed to eat this way type of thing. And so it's like giving me permission to just feel more okay with the fact that I just don't want to eat the way that, everybody's supposed to eat type of thing. And so the buzzing atmosphere thing is definitely on like hitting that whole aspect. So someone with buzzing atmosphere, or like nervous type of ingestion is in human design is like that person that like eats on the run constantly, making a smoothie for breakfast and running out the door if you have to go to work, and like eating as you go along. And we've been taught over the years that that's not right. You shouldn't do that, because you should be in a rest and digest state, which is parasympathetic nervous system state. You should be relaxed and chilled, like while you're eating, like listen to soft music or whatever. And I'm like, I don't really want to do that. I want to be in like a loud and buzzing restaurant eating pasta, or something like that. Or like, I want to be, like what I have right now in front of me is like a bunch of like vegetables and some charcuterie stuff. And that's what I just had for lunch at like, it's going on 1:00 right now. So it's like, I'm going to stand here, right? It's probably unlikely I'm going to sit down to eat, and I'm going to stand here and I'm going to eat my food while I'm doing something else, because that's actually what makes me feel good. And this is only going to make sense to someone, who it makes sense to, right? And then other people are going to be like, no, that doesn't make me feel good. And that's right. It may not. It depends on what your digestion type is in human design. You got to figure that out. And then once you figure that out, you can start experimenting with it. So that's the key point here. What I'm saying isn't for everybody. It's only for people who have similar aspects in their chart, or what their digestion is in human design, that type of stuff. So yeah, buzzing atmosphere, big deal for me. I love it. I think it's like how I thrive. Yeah, that's a big deal. Another thing too that I've been experimenting with a little bit, and it kind of goes back to what I was talking about before of like, I eat what I want. I'm doing this a lot in this video, is more human design type. So I had listened to Jenna Zoe. She had mentioned something, it was a little while ago, about energy types. And so with manifestors, for example, and so I'm a manifestor in human design. And it's more like, if I initiate. So if I initiate the idea that eating this food is going to be good for me, then it's more likely that it's not going to cause any digestive disturbances. That's kind of like a theoretical thing, right? I find it interesting, irregardless, just to experiment with what that means. So like, for example, I love pasta. I love pasta. It's so good, but I've always believed that pasta wasn't good for me. Pasta bloated me. I had an upset stomach every time I ate pasta. So I stopped eating it. Pasta is bad for you. Pasta makes you fat, right? All those beliefs. So then what would happen when I consumed pasta? I'd get super like water retention, bloated, like swollen, just like stomach pain. None of it was good for me, right? So then I believed that pasta was bad. I couldn't eat pasta anymore. So I stopped eating it. But once I kind of like shifted my perception of, oh, it's not like, this isn't going to bother me. I also, by the way, did change up where I was getting my pasta from, which I also, again, this is probably another talk because there's layers of things going on here, right? Like nothing's black and white. And what I'm saying right now might change like 3 months from now because of something else that I've learned, right? So this is my experience right now at this moment in time with this concept. So with the pasta thing, I also think that there's something to be said for like glyphosate exposure or other types of chemicals that are in the pasta as like the natural preservatives. How do those respond in your body? It's not just about the gluten in the pasta, right? Like there's so many other layers as to why someone might have a sensitivity to something like pasta. So I make sure that all my pasta is from, it's made in Italy. And I will say that I do notice that if I pick up like grocery store gnocchi, for example, that was like mass produced or like made somewhere in North America, the ingredient profile is obviously different. But I also notice it does upset my stomach. So there is some stuff there too, right? Where it's like, of course you got to be mindful of your ingestion. Like don't be an idiot overall. Just on the grand scheme of things, just don't. But there's something to be said for understanding what I'm talking about in terms of like how that shows up for you in your chart, or how intent behind what you're eating matters. And I find this stuff really fascinating because my understanding of nutrition has been like mind-blowingly I've blown the socks off of my understanding of nutrition over the years, where it's like it's not as black and white as we think that it is. I just think that there's so much going on behind the scenes in terms of like our relationship with food, our mindset about it, what nourishment means to us, all that type of stuff that plays an influence on how our bodies actually digest and assimilate and absorb nutrition. Which again goes back to human design because it is so freaking fascinating. So I will end this conversation here. Just wanted to give you guys just a little bit of insight as to like my relationship with nutrition, and how I used elements of human design to help shape my relationship with nutrition. And so far it's been a really fascinating journey to understand, and as I continue to understand it, I will continue to share more. So love you guys. Thank you for being here. Bye.